Hey, it's Friday afternoon. The cutting board has been under the clamps for about 24 hours, so now it's time to take it out and see how well it did. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start loosening up the big clamps. I'm going to loosen them all up. I think for the most part, I think this thing turned out pretty good. I was really happy the way the glue up work looked like. These little clamps I'm taking off, they're called F clamps simply because of the shape of the letter F. So the word of the day is fun clamps, brought to you by letter F. That's pretty good. Got a little bit of wax paper to get removed, and that's an easy process to do. So otherwise, I think it turned out pretty good. Flat. Not too bad. Not too bad. This is nice. We clean up and take care of all this. So this will be the back side, I believe. No, I believe I'll make the other side. This will be the back side. So, but anyway, this is going to clean up pretty nice. So a 24-hour glue up was the trick that I needed to make sure that it stayed nice and glued up. And like I said, you look across and it's pretty nice and flat, which is what you wanted to see. Pretty flat across this way as well. No cut that I can see. So I'm very, very pleased with the flatness of this board. This is what you're looking for. Very little rocking, but I'll get that out. Not much, and that could be actually from this table, not necessarily from the board. So now the next step to do is to go ahead and clean up the little bit of glue squeeze out that I have, and I'll do that with the little chisels and kind of get it off, and then I'll come back with a hand sander, random orbital sander, and I'll sand it smooth. And I'll do that on both sides, get it all cleaned up, because again, this is about 18 inches wide, and it's too wide to go into my to my planer. My planer is only 12 inches, so I can't run this through my planer to clean everything up. So now it's back to the hand tools to do my work. But I love working with hand tools as much as I do my power tools. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, and I'll be back in a minute when I start the sanding and everything.
Okay, I decided to do the sanding outside today. Be outside while I can. Been kind of cooped up with this COVID-19, and so I'm going to take advantage of being outside a little bit today. But anyway, what I'm going to do is starting out with some 120 grit sandpaper, and going to kind of clean things up here, and then I'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. I may end up having to go back with a little bit coarser paper, but we'll see how it cleans up. So here we go. I believe I am going to start with another new 80 grit pad. This one's just a little bit worn out, so I think it's going to help a little bit. So I'll be right back. Okay, I went and got a new 80 grit pad, and just going to stick it on its Velcro back and just make sure to line up the holes, and this will help a little bit more. So here we go. All right, if you're gonna make cutting boards, you gotta learn to love sanding, and I love sanding. I always like sanding because it reveals what my board or my project's gonna look like. And so this is looking pretty good. I gotta give a shout out to Izzy, Swan, and James over at Stumpy Nubs Woodworking. Those two guys have got some great videos on sanding and the proper way to sand, and I'm telling you, their techniques have changed my game. So Izzy and Stumpy, I appreciate the tutorials y'all put out on sanding. Very well done, and I appreciate it very much. So anyway, here we go with side 2. I'm not going to bore you with this one. I'll stop the video on this one, but we're going to go ahead and do side 2 the same. So don't put a lot of pressure on the sander. Let the sander do the work. Take it nice and slow, and then you also need to make sure that the belt or the pad stays clean. So I'll see you in just a few minutes. Okay, what I'm going to do, I already started. I've made 4 cuts, but I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of the cross cut. This section here is going to be showing you how I cut these. They're all cut 1 1/4 inch wide gap. I'm numbering them so I keep them in order. Okay, here's the magic of the checkerboard. You saw where I had it in the solid lines, but now it's just a matter of staggering every other board. Loosen these up a little bit, make it easier to stagger them. So now you get an idea of how it's going to work out. And then I'll glue it all back up together and I get the checkerboard pattern. So that's one way that you can do it. I'll end up actually cutting off this section, and I'll cut off this section right here, and I'll end up with that section right there. So that's one way you can do it. So the magic of the checkerboard. In the woodworking world, one of the things we do is quite often is called a dry fit. And in this situation, I'm dry fitting this cutting board to make sure that everything's going to work out, clamp up fine, and it's going to be exactly how I want it when it's all glued up. This bracket that this is all in, this MDF plywood, and it has that railing and that railing right there. I actually built that so that I could make my US flags, but because that far corner is a perfect 90-degree corner, it's also great for me to lay out these cutting boards. This is going to make the glue up of the final cutting board a whole lot better, and it's going to allow me to make sure that I've got everything lined up just exactly like it needs to be. Down here on the bottom, I'm going to cover this all with clear packing tape, and then that way there won't be any glue sticking to anything, and it's going to make it easier for me to pull it out of the clamps and remove from the tape and clean it up. So that's the next step in the process. So I will be pulling the clamps off, picking up the board slats, and then putting down the tape, and then we'll be gluing it back up, and then it'll spend at least 24 hours under glue right here. Again, you get to build these checkerboard pattern styles. You get to build them at least 2 times. Once with the straight lines, and then once again you get to glue them up again with the checkerboard pattern. But they're quite worth it when you see them all finished and oiled down and looking good. So I'm looking forward to finishing this one for my customer. So I'll be back. Because I own 12 of these clamps, I went ahead and used 9 of them on this cutting board. That gives you, you can tell, just solid clamping all the way across from one side to the other. So this is going to help make this a really solid cutting board. So I'm going to leave this in this jig overnight. Probably be tomorrow afternoon before I pull this thing out. I want to let it sit at least 24 hours. That's how it worked out so far. Of course, you can't see all the checkerboard pattern until I get right directly over it, because the clamp bodies were kind of hiding some of it. But it's going to be a solid little cutting board when I get it done.